If we've made changes, I know you're going to like them.
I think it's about options. It's about strategic options and releasing the running game. It's not the running game necessarily as a premium above the aerial game. Courses under 50 years, the net fall is quite dramatic in this list. It's a lesson that every golfer on the planet should take, which is look at your golf course, understand where the space is, understand how to avoid the hazards, play angles, and your enjoyment will go up and your score will go down. It's incumbent on every golfer to understand golf architecture, at least for their own selfish enjoyment, but more importantly for the good of the game.
Ranking's a reflection of the consensus of the panel, and I think perhaps in the past, because something was new and unique, big, bold, brash, really green, really white, really blue, all of those color palettes, in the last 20 years, probably a lot of people were very much impressed with those types of things, because it was something that maybe wasn't normal or common in England. They had a bit of an inflated view.
Game is an amateur game. I mean, the professional side of it, there are idols and heroes and fun to watch them play. But I mean, if it wasn't for amateur golf, there would be no golf.
You have to remember when you play a golf course and you're out there for 4 hours or whatever, you're only hitting a ball for 15 minutes of that. So there's a lot of time to look around.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Top 100 Clubhouse podcast. I'm your host, James Henderson. I'm with the ever-present Jasper Miners, the editor of Top 100. And first-time pod contributor, Simon Barrington. How are you doing, Simon?
Hi, James. Thank you for having me on the Top 100 podcast.
Oh, it's more than welcome. It's great to have you on the team. So Simon, for the people that don't know, is a mathematician. He's a financier by trade, and he has a love of James Braid. Is that fair enough, Simon?
I think that's a fair reflection. Yes, my both profession and architectural passion.
Well, we've been trying to do something around James Braid with you, but the one thing I would say is if anyone who hasn't listened to it, there's a 3-parter that Cookie Jar did with Simon on James Braid that I think is absolutely superb and one of the best podcasts I've listened to over the last few years. So if you want to check out Simon's amazing knowledge about Braid, please check that out. This week are we a week ahead, Jasper, of the ranking release for England?
Yes, so we're recording this Friday the 10th, so it's Masters week. It's Friday of the Masters. We start to have some ranking releases for the 9 England regions go out next week, and then the full English ranking will go out on socials and live on the website on the 26th. So we've effectively got 2 weeks of English content across socials and on the website. And then the grand reveal is the 26th of April. So if you're listening to the podcast and you haven't signed up for the newsletter, head over to the website, put in your email address, and you'll get a early bird email with the updated rankings for England. So you'll have something to talk about Saturday, the 25th at the club. And then officially it comes out on the Sunday, the 26th, so everybody can digest it and talk around the club with it. Yeah, this is a little taster, and hopefully we'll get some of the gossip going around the England rankings.
I can already imagine the situation. You're sitting there. It's like, oh, I know West Sussex is at whatever. And they're like, no, I checked it last night. It's blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, check tomorrow.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, there'll be a little bit of that. So yeah, we know that lots of people use the rankings, especially for travel. England is by far one of the best used bits of the website, if you will. It gets more traffic mostly, more than anyone else. And London itself is one of the biggest cities where people use the site. So yeah. We'll try and give any one of our loyal listeners, readers, a little bit of a leg up.
Jasper, I know we have a huge contingent of people on the website that are English or Brits. Mm-hmm. And do you reckon the use of the website is not just because of that, but because of the fact that England is still very accessible in price and in quality?
Yeah, I think that's a fair estimation. I mean, at the really, really high end of English golf, it still doesn't get to the heady heights of Ireland and Scotland. So, I mean, just looking very... Birkdale is 495 this year. And that is, I mean, you've got Sunningdale, which is 450 a round. And then you've got Birkdale at 495. St. George's is 400 peak, along with Lytham. So I think you see a little bit, and Liverpool. So you see a little bit of the recent open venues who are riding that wave of perhaps American tourists who are coming over, especially the fact that you've got Lytham probably hosting the Open soon in the next couple of years. I think that's kind of one of the golf's worst kept secrets at this point. Birkdale this year, and then Hoylake recently. So they're cashing in, which is fine for the club. We understand why that happens. And then Sunningdale just has that premium with probably the best 36 in the world. And then the West London premium. So that being said, once you get past those kind of top 4 or 5 clubs, the cost plummets in England. It's probably, for world-class golf, England is still, and even courses around London, are still the best value golf to be had in Britain and Ireland, which is amazing when you stop and think about it.
I'm not surprised, though, because the tourism side of England hasn't quite reached the B-sides, would be the harsh way of saying it, but there's some great B-sides out there. Whereas in Scotland it has, and you can see that in the price points of the likes of Dunbar being over 200 quid. Even though it's worth every penny, it's the fact that before it was 100. So Dunbar had 4,500 visitors one year, and someone recommended to them, it's like the whole club got together, like, everyone's getting 9,000 rounds from visitors. We need more rounds because we want to do all these renovations and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, we need to lower the price, the classic Scottish sentiment. Let's lower the price. More people will come. There was an American who came in and said, why don't you double the price? Just double it to 200. See what happens. I promise you, just try it for a year. So they tried it for a year. Next year, they had 9,000 visitors.
And I think there's that perception, like especially stateside, is like quality is inherently linked to price. And I think that's one thing that we see in England is that there's, value is what you get and price is what you pay. But there is still very good value golf to be had. Even on the upper echelons. I mean, 10 English golf courses go into the world. 40 English golf courses go into GB&I. And even within there, you can play those courses for some of them around £100 during peak season. So less when you get into shoulder season, and then even less when you get into winter. And the good thing about most of those courses, virtually all of them, is they're all free draining. They're either really good heathlands or links courses. So even if you look at that and you think, 155 for the Addington, that's a bit pricey for July or August golf. For 155 quid, you can play one of the best heathlands in London. I mean, it's on a unique site being mostly gravel, but it drains really, really well. And the turf quality's improved immensely over the last few years with investment. So it's one of those ones where, the smart money's probably on courses like that, because in a few years' time, I think you'll see Addington probably double its green fee. I don't know what Ryan's got planned, but where it's going in the company it'll keep, that wouldn't necessarily be out of the realms of reasonableness.
Where in that ranking would you say is the best value?
I mean, you get down. It's an interesting one. I'm sure we'll get into this, but especially with some of the stats that Simon's got prepared. But I mean, you can play a lot of golf under £100. There's probably 10 courses they're in and around there. Look, you have to travel perhaps to some areas of the country that you wouldn't necessarily go to, or a little bit more difficult to get to. So, Perranporth is one that stands out. That's down in Cornwall. Seaton Carew, so in the northeast. Kington is one that's an absolute bargain. 39 quid peak season. I mean, and Kington's a wonderful golf course. But then you've even got like Purbeck, Seascale, Cavendish, Cleve Hill, Yelverton, Appleby, Dunstanborough. I mean, and a lot of those you can like less than £50. So there's still amazing value to be had. And then there's some on the contenders list that we haven't even touched yet.
Yeah, I'd add a couple, Jasper, which would be, right around the top 50. You've got Beaudesert at 120. You've got Goswick at 100. I mean, Goswick's wonderful.
It's so good.
And for anybody visiting East Lothian, you can tack it on in a heartbeat just by driving down the A1.
It's 45 minutes from East Lothian, and I know that, I think it was Tom McKenzie that did it, but they've just got rid of their worst hole and actually dropped in quite a cool little par 3. In terms of quality level across the board, it's now unbelievable.
The knock-on effects of them doing that solves a few safety issues and congestion issues around the clubhouse as well. So you'll see changes and improvements in routing for other holes that stem off that, which is, despite the fact it's in an enormous dunescape along a wonderful dune ridge, it's actually quite constrained in terms of its property. And it's a very clever way of doing it.
I tell you what, in terms of unbuilt golf courses, the area around Goswick is next level. I love that game when you're driving down the road and just get lost in the sauce. Oh, that ground looks good. That looks amazing. So in terms of big picture, just to start off with, I know that you're both involved in the Scotland rankings as well. And is England harder to rank than Scotland?
I think it's got incredible depth. Obviously, in terms of there's a quantum of golf courses in terms of numbers that is much higher. But if you go back, people will know I'm fairly historical in my view, although I love modern golf too, modern design too. You look into sort of Michael Morrison's book, or you look into Stephen Proctor's book, The Long Golden Afternoon, and you can see the explosion of the game. Really post Westward Ho and onwards. It's our biggest panel. We have, panelists, that are built up from the bottom up from regional, as well as from the top down from global. And I know you've discussed that on the pod previously in terms of getting input from people who have a global perception, and people who have a local perception. And I think the meeting of bottom up and top down is fairly unique for one of the ranking structures. So that's to its benefit as well. But yeah, as Jasper said, the quality of golf, the quality of landforms, the variety of landforms, the variety of architects, really England stands head and shoulders above many areas in on the globe. It's been less marketed. It's been, you've got the England's Gulf Coast, and that's a nice little sort of, for travelers, there's some branding and some local tourist money, tourism board money gone in there. But really, on a national level, that's been very disorganized. It's been very much for the clubs to market themselves, or get together with 2 or 3 of their local peers and neighbours. So to that extent, there is astonishing value in England. Prices have gone up. I mean, demand drives prices post-COVID and everything else. And obviously we've had massive top-down inflation that we discussed at the beginning. So there has been some expectation levels on price and expectations on what needs to be delivered. And I think, clubs have to be careful not to spend and therefore create long-term maintenance and overhead cost. But nevertheless, there's some wonderful, wonderful examples of some good work. You mentioned statistics. I might be a good opportunity to raise it, because obviously we're teasing the new rankings, which I'm proud to be lead on, which is really just a sort of overseeing role and nothing too taxing, because we've got great rankers and panelists. But if we look at a break of £150 on green fees, the courses that are above £150 actually come down the list on an average by about 2.5, 2.25. But interestingly, the courses under £150 climb the list by about 6.75 ranking places. I think that's fascinating. So what that I think is driven by, and I guess I'll let you guys think about why. Actually, I'll throw the question back at you. Why do you think that's occurring? But I do think it is something that's notable.
So I've thought about this as well. I didn't have the stats, but I guess when you look at the rankings and you kind of piece through it, and having spent a lot of time with the England panel, maybe we'll get on to why I've had maybe a disproportional amount of time spent here, not necessarily in making the final rankings. So you kind of get that feeling as you look at the courses, and naturally they almost settle into different tiers. So you get like the World 100 tier, and then there's a little bit of overlap of maybe 2 or 3 courses at each tier where you think, well, those could jump up or you could swap those out. But within relatively 10, 15, 20 courses, you kind of start to see them step down. But that's definitely to a less extent when it comes to England. And I think part of the reason why we've seen this, a lot of the big private clubs that are perhaps newer, quote unquote, because there hasn't been a lot of really recent new builds. I mean, the ranking's a reflection of the consensus of the panel. And I think perhaps in the past, because something was new and unique, or it was a bit of a novelty in England, and I'll use a couple of examples like JCB or the Wisley, or even Bearwood Lakes. Like when those came out, it was kind of the first time that you've seen big, bold, brash, really green, really white, really blue, all of those color palettes like popping, the Augustification, if you will, of golf. And I think in the last 20 years, probably a lot of people were very much impressed with those types of things, because it was something that maybe wasn't normal or common in England. And maybe because of that, they had a bit of an inflated view. And I think as we've moved forward, as people have become better traveled and they've seen more things and they've played in the States and they've played abroad, they get to see things like Parkland at a really, really high level. And then when you come back home, you're like, well, that's good, but now I can see how good Parkland can be. And so maybe that's adjusted things. And as well, I think coming back to it, you always have this question, how do you possibly rank a links course against a heathland course, against a parkland course, against a chalk downland course, against a clifftop course? And you just have to go back to the ranking criteria and you say, well, what are the things that we rank? Well, it's not that we prefer links or heathland over parkland or clifftop. It's the fact that what we say is the running game is really important. And inherently you get that on courses that have finer grasses that are less sticky, that have sandy soils that are free draining, where turf conditions allow the ball to run. And those contours, where once the ball hits the ground, that it's on the ground rolling as much as it was in the air, as opposed to just hitting and sticking. And so when you go back to that, now you have a set of criteria that you can use to evaluate golf courses, that you can say, okay, is this course better than that course? And if you use those criteria, you can say yes. So I think telling the panel again and again and again, okay, good, but what we need to do is not look at the flash and whether they have a bag drop and they've got really nice locker rooms. Let's get back to playing conditions and just judge things on caliber of golf. I think that's why, maybe 2 reasons that I've seen some courses slip that perhaps were a lot higher, but have fallen simply due to maybe those things.
I think there's definitely a premium of the shock of the new, and that happens. And I've been involved in panels before back in the 90s, and remember courses like East Sussex National coming in, and the Forest of Arden and places that really have moved away from the zeitgeist and popularity, and there is some architectural quality there, and don't get me wrong, I'm certainly not anti-modern courses. There's some wonderful modern courses I've played in the last couple of years globally, but I think there is the shock of the new. I think you mentioned the running game, Jasper, is quite topical, and we'll go on to it, but I think it's about options. It's about strategic options and releasing the running game. So it's not the running game necessarily as a premium above the aerial game. It's the fact that you have those choices, that you can follow the stato driven, bomb and gouge and go straight, and that's the way you're going to lower your score. But most golfers aren't capable of playing that game, which is, I'm going to move on to a unbelievable example that happened yesterday, which people may realize what I'm moving towards. But, I think there are, having those options, having the opportunity to play the ground game, statistically, just to wrap this up in terms of, modern courses, for courses that have been built in England in the last 50 years, of which there are not many. There are not many.
Woburn just sneaks in.
The Marquis is in, and Woburn, Duchess, and Dukes are 50 this year. Well, the Dukes is 50 this year, and Duchess was slightly afterwards. And for full disclosure, I'm a member, and therefore did not rank my own club. So that's very important that people realise that we're very unbiased in that respect. But for courses under 50 years, the net fall is quite dramatic in this list. It doesn't mean that they're not good. It doesn't mean that they're not good tests of golf. They're tests of a certain type of golf. And that seems to have moved away, and it's about the architectural or golf architecture literacy of our panel, which is climbing, and also our global perspective is climbing. So let me go back to the example that I'm itching to tell you about. Spent most of the morning on the Masters website, which is the most wonderful website. You can watch every shot from every player. So yesterday we had a prime example of what we're talking about with the 3-ball of Aldrich's Pogleiter, Rasmus Nergaard Peterson, who are two of the biggest bombers in the game, and 60-year-old Jose Maria Olazábal. And I recommend people go back and go onto the Masters website and watch every single shot of Jose Maria navigating his way around a 7,600-yard golf course. His longest drive, I think, was something around 249. And he created, he didn't play every shot perfectly. In fact, I think he was at bottom on both accuracy and distance on stats. But he navigated the space and he tacked his way around that golf course and utilized the ground game and his incredible short game, which we know, to create a score. And he was 2 under on the 15th tee. And 15 was the only mental error he really made, which he hit it into the water with his pitch having laid up. But he gave these guys an absolute lesson. And it's a lesson that every golfer on the planet should take, which is look at your golf course, understand where the space is, understand how to avoid the hazards, play angles, and your enjoyment will go up and your score will go down. Now we're not all blessed with the short game of Jose Maria Olazábal, but it wasn't just about short game. And that's the important lesson here, is to understand how people play strategically, raise your own golfing IQ. And Bobby Jones famously said, it is incumbent on and I'm paraphrasing, I won't get the exact wording, it's incumbent on every golfer to understand golf architecture, at least for their own selfish enjoyment, but more importantly for the good of the game. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened to Augusta, because it was firm yesterday, because you had this massive contradiction. Now, Ollie's not going to win the Masters this year, but he's won the argument. And I think that's the key. He's a fantastic gentleman. He's one of the nicest people I'm privileged to have met in my former life at the PGA. Just an absolute wonderful human being. But the way he constructed that round was cerebral. It was everything we should be celebrating as the options, but just classic members golf. We all know there's a guy in our club who hits it 175 yards, who frustrates you in match play every time, and you pejoratively call him a nerdler because he just nerdles around the course and he doesn't bomb and gouge and impress with 8-irons to par 5s. But he frustrates the hell out of the young guns every time. Mm-hmm. And if I was Aldrich Pogleiter and Rasmus Nergaard Peterson, who were beaten by 10 shots and 3 shots respectively, I would ask for 3 hours with Ollie in the clubhouse afterwards to say, how do I do that?
Yeah.
Then they would become world-class world beaters, having that brain with their talent.
Ed, a really good transition, actually, because for quite a few years, Jasper and I and a number of people within our sphere we've been talking about the fact the Augusta effect has had a negative impact on the quality of golf course architecture, because it was all about just pristine, and everyone's thinking it's not Augusta's fault, everyone's just thinking about really pristine golf courses. Now, It still is pristine, but the thing that we've been spouting about being the best thing for golf, which is firm, fast surfaces, has now taken effect at Augusta. And I feel sorry for these guys who have built these golf courses, spent huge amounts of money on greenkeeping for in the last 50 years, trying to make these spinny, kind of soft golf courses. And Augusta's just gone, well, if you're trying to copy us, we're doing it that way, which is the way that our rankings is rating it, which is quite cool. It must be quite inspiring for people like us who are, we're nobody to Augusta. But the thing is, they're moving in the right direction for what we think makes better golf.
Yes, I think that's true. But I mean, this does tie in actually to what we were saying about the modern courses maybe slipping down a little. Is Augusta has the money, it has the capability, and Chairman Ridley said this in his press conference. You know, they will do whatever they need to do to deal with the distance of the ball, and he was very pro rollback, and that was clear in his press conference. But they do understand their place in the game, and that comes from the spirit of Bobby Jones, and it comes from the spirit of Clifford Roberts, and you know, he has some edges to his personality, which we all know in the history, and that's fine. But he was an incredibly detailed individual and was very precious about representing Bobby Jones' legacy. And I think that's instructive, but it's very hard, as Jasper said, for a modern course to have the capability of producing the agronomic conditions that can be firm and fast on a clay site. Actually, I was watching, this is going to digress again, but which is my wont. But I was actually watching a geology feed, I think it was on Instagram, that was talking about the specific clay that Augusta sits on. And it's known as the fall line, which is interesting because there's a OCM course being built at the moment called the Fall Line, and it's a geological feature in that area. And actually, although it's clay, it's relatively free draining clay. It's not really, really sticky, which is interesting because and these are the detailed, nerdy nuances that people dig into. So Augusta did have certain issues and with drainage, especially around the 12th green, which was legendary for being extremely boggy. In fact, they really struggled to get construction machinery on it back in 1930. But the spirit of St Andrews comes through, the spirit of Mackenzie comes through, and the spirit of Jones comes through in terms of how they wanted that course to play. And the club are returning to that spirit, having moved away from it for several years. And that's a blessing, because for our courses in England, GB&I and Ireland, that's actually a more beneficial environmentally way and resource allocation way of running a golf course and providing playing conditions that are fun, and providing those options that smart golfers, intelligent golfers can use.
Even just on that point, I mean, I was watching the Masters last night when I came in after playing at Denham, which is, legendary lunch, but the course is, we can get onto that because it just sneaks into the England 100. But there's flyovers, a couple of drone flyovers of the golf course at Augusta, and even on a couple of the edges of the green sites, there's a little bit of brown showing. And I just thought, that's something you just would not have seen a couple of years ago. And if it was there, they probably would have taken some sort of measure to make sure that it wouldn't have looked like that. So imagine all these years where you have members walk into the secretary's office or stop a greenkeeper and say, look, why can't we be more like that? And referring to Augusta. It's those little things that might just take the pressure off, which I think is good. And when you look at our rankings, I think we're celebrating courses that are not necessarily long championship courses. There's as much to be said now for fun, interesting, unique, dare we say quirky. I think in Scotland, you've had the Cruden Bays and the North Berwick's that have, for a lot of people, that's become mainstream. In England, it still hasn't necessarily caught on, and I think that's one thing where we've been able to, because the tapestry of English golf, especially with common land golf or hilltop golf, going to what a lot of Braid did on sites that were, dare we say, unconventional compared to maybe what the rest of the Golden Age architects were dealt with. Simpson and Colt kind of stayed around, nice, relatively flat, I guess you could say, in comparatively speaking to some of the really big courses that the Braid had to work with. Mm-hmm. And Braid's genius got him around and created some really cool routings. But the fact that you can play good golf on all those different sites, and just because they are a little bit more taxing to walk, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're any less of a golf course. So I'm just kind of looking through the list. I mean, I think the last one that came in, I don't know if it was the last list or the one before, was Cleve Hill. And that's kind of become one of those kind of cool cult following hipster hangout type things in the golf world. Yep. But I think that's kind of been the gateway for a lot of people to say, oh, actually, this is really kind of cool thing in golf. And if I like Cleve Hill, then, although Minchinhampton Old doesn't make our list, or Painswick doesn't make our list, there's a lot of golf kind of in those corridors that is well worth looking for. And I wouldn't be surprised in the future if we see more of those courses. The other one to mention that's kind of cut from that cloth is Yelverton, yes, which entered the list and kind of moves up. But Yelverton's a brilliant golf course. And it is definitely ragged around the edges. But just like Royal North Devon, you have a few of these perceived outliers, but I think they're becoming more mainstream, and that's been reflected in the ranking.
Yeah, I think you've mentioned it before, one of the largest climbers is Kington, which is, the highest course in England. And, it's C.K. Hutchinson, who was Braid's protege at the Glen Eagles, and it's bunkerless and it's quirky and it's got amazing views. But, again, it's all about turf. It's about turf and ground conditions, and that's great. And then, you have there's other movers, as we've mentioned, Goswick, we've mentioned, Royal Devon's moved up nicely, Perranporth, Seacroft, these sorts of courses, they have quirk, they have interest, they have fun. And the beauty of rankings, which are generally focused on for travelers, is people aren't doing an enormous amount of repeat play on these courses. And so the shock of the new in terms of quirk, not the shock of the new as we were previously talking about, but the excitement and the variety of quirk is something that makes your trips fun. It makes your discussions in the Airbnb afterwards, dynamic and interesting, and someone will hate it and someone will love it, and it's a blast. Whenever you go away on tours, play match play or some construction of match play, and play quirky courses and have fun.
This podcast is brought to you by Echo Shoes, particularly their new Biome C5. David, I know you have a wee bit of a fondness for an Echo.
Yeah, no doubt. I am literally a walking advertisement for Echo. And I can honestly say I played the World Top 100 in my Echoes. I spent years running around, diving around tennis court and stuff like that for a really long time. And that takes a toll because it was hard courts. And so hard courts, there's a lot of, things going on with your feet. And when I started to get a little bit older, not even old, like in my 30s, I had, my feet were bothering me when I had to do long walks and stuff like that. I mean,
4.5 miles is the standard golf round.
So 4.5 miles, right? So 4.5 miles of walking. When your feet hurt, it's the worst thing ever. And I had so many rounds where I would get done, and when I first started playing golf, and I couldn't take it. I had to get the shoes off, and my feet were just throbbing. And I ran into Echo probably in 2007, 2008, 2009, whatever the year was. It was before I started my journey really for playing the World Top 100.
Yeah, if you're doing the world's top 100, you need to be able to trust where your clubs are going and never get sore feet.
Exactly.
So, yeah. The rest you can sort out along the way. So just a couple of things about the Echo Biome C5. Every detail is crafted for the perfect feel. And I know David and his many adventures in golf have enjoyed Echoes over the years, but these have been designed to play and built for comfort. So thank you very much, Echo. Appreciate it a lot.
This episode is brought to you by the Lockhart Travel Club. We believe golf is more than a game. It's a journey. A journey we've made across 34 of the world's top 100 courses last year. And now is your turn. We curate bespoke travel experiences for passionate golfers who expect nothing but the best. Membership is limited, so join us at lockharttravelclub.com.
There's something really interesting about England, though, for me, as someone who travels. I travel all over, played a lot of different places, and I have grown up in Scotland and seen the Scotland change, right? Mm-hmm. The change in pricing, change in everything from foreign investment, foreign engagement with Scotland. England is much more a microcosm of its own beast. The traveling golfer within England tends to be English. It's got a large enough population and wealthy enough population to be able to engage with a lot of these clubs and be able to sustain a huge network of golf courses that are able to maintain quality golf course architecture, quality golf courses. Mm-hmm. Does that mean that our change to a more international opinion will rock the boat a wee bit within England, because there is this network of people that have their own opinion of this is what England should be?
I think it could do. I think sometimes people are quite regional in the way that they travel as well. And I think the beauty of the site is encouraging people to go to more disparate places and travel around your locality and different countries. So I think what you find is, and we spoke about it a little bit, and not in some sort of ivory tower academic, surrounded by books. Apologies, that's the way things are. I'm just very passionate about architecture, certainly not just James Braid, but all golf architecture. And it goes back to that Jones quote, which is, people should be interested in golf course architecture just because it makes their golf more fun and also potentially improves their golf and their scores, if that's something that people care about, which quite rightly they do. They want to be measured. People have an intrinsic desire to be measured. So getting those people who travel more, whether by studying it from books or trying to raise their golfing IQ that way, but merely just by osmosis of seeing more disparate and variety of golf, get a better appreciation of what golf can be. And so that's what the site is about, discovery. It's about discovering stuff that can help you enjoy the game more, because it's, this is a pastime. I'm happy to lead the panel, but I have a day job, and it's a passion that I do around the edges, because golf's a very important part to my life, and hopefully it is for those listening to the pod and others that join the game. But the beauty of the type of golf that we're talking about, it's fun for people from beginner right the way through. Once you get to the elite game is a very different game, and that's exactly what Ridley was talking about in his press conference, and that's a different political issue. But I think what we're about, what I hope our panelists are about, and what the system is about, is inspiring people to have a better appreciation of golf courses and how much that can impact positively on their life and their well-being. So that sounds a bit like a sermon, but it's a genuine wish of mine, is to help raise the education of people to appreciate what this wonderful game can be.
I think back in the day, I remember going to the website about 10 years ago, and I organised for 16 lads to go and play together on a tour. And I just remember going to the website, looking up, and I think it was the best places to go with a group of boys or whatever. I don't know what the title was, but it essentially said that to me at the time. And I think out of the recommended list, it was like Belfry, Celtic Manor. 10 years ago, it was like all these golf courses and things that we don't even talk about anymore. And I know that we played the Brabazon, and most of my guys hated it. But they loved the golf course, loved the experience, loved the whatever. But it destroyed them, because it wasn't a deep list of good quality golfers. But if we did go to one of these, to the ones that we are recommending, stayed in the local inn, we probably had a much better time, spent a lot less in the bar, Do you know, it's one of those things. It's like if you're doing these tours and you're putting them to practical effect, if you've got a group of guys at different varying ranges of level, going to these places makes a big difference.
Yeah, I think the golfing demographic is an interesting one, especially when you're putting a group together. You've got to be aware of how much these things cost too. But some of those sites that you talk about, they have a very definite, hugely positive effect on the game as well, which is, there is an accessibility benefit as well. And they certainly have a place, both, in tournament golf and in participation golf. So it's not, I think it's, you can see in the rankings how that perception has changed, but that's not to say that they're just completely, no-go areas quite from it. In fact, I was looking back at the 1989 Ryder Cup video a while ago, and that's quite fun because clearly the Belfry has at least two holes which are really, really impressive from a golf architecture perspective. 10 and 18 are dramatic holes. One could say that they're quirky, but they're on a big stadium style. I mean, 10 is, very brave design.
Hence the one that stuck with all of us.
Yes, and it should. It's a really impressive piece of architecture.
We filmed one of the boys, Dougal, who will hate the fact that I'm mentioning this, but Dougal hit a beautiful drive, just left pin high, just left on the fairway, and proceeds to chunk it into the middle of the water. And that video ended up going viral about 10 years ago. So,
wow.
So it was because his body just slumped. It was the most obvious, oh no, moment. But sorry, but that just shows you what the great golf course architecture can do. It really lasts in the memory.
Yes, yeah. So and then it's if you had 18 like that, it'd be one of the world's best golf courses, and you can talk about what is the least good hole on somewhere like Augusta and have great discussions about it. But, there are at least 17 wonderful holes at Augusta of the highest of qualities. And I'll let you join the dots as to which one I don't like. And that's a personal opinion. And I think that's what the whole thing about rankings, we spoke about this, and this is what we're to talk about, which is the England list that's coming out soon, is these are a measure of consensus, and they're a measure of the consensus of a very educated group. As I say, it comes from different areas. It comes from local built up, and Jasper did a great job last year putting on a number of days around England and identifying people who had a genuine passion and interest. And I certainly wouldn't be interested in nominally leading a panel where people had a particular one view and one view only. We want people with that variant perception. We want people with different views and passions and interests in it. And you stick it in statistically it comes out, and this is what the rankings do. And they're a barometer of where golf and golf architecture and appreciation of courses are. The other thing I think is important for the rankings is to try and understand where mistakes are made. And, I think you will see in the future rankings that there's, some of the spending that's been done by some clubs has maybe been done a little clumsily. And I think you'll see a difference in the rankings over the next few years. And it will take years. Things fade. Where maybe mistakes have been made because the people haven't been true to the original spirit of the original design, the land, the topography, the aesthetic, and they've gone for the shiny, new, wiggly white bunker or whatever it might be. And those are fads and fashions. And, back in the 60s and 70s, it was plant trees everywhere and try and be a separated golf course, and now people are opening up golf courses. So things do change. But if you focus on the key aspects of architecture that you mentioned in our ranking guidance, Jasper, which is, having the ground game, having options, having space, and to provide the level of agronomy for that at an acceptable level, you need space, light and air. And that's why tree clearance is happening and everything else. But the obvious spending on usually hazards, I think some of it is quite misguided, but that's a personal view. And I think that will potentially change over the next few years.
White sand with concrete underneath it, right?
Concrete, rubber, whatever you want to put under it. Yeah.
I know a few courses, not round me, but I'll leave them unnamed, that have had, because of weird winds and different things, they've had preferred lies and bunkers because of this concrete underlaying. And anyway, and now they're costing a fortune because they haven't put new sand in it the whole time. And they thought it was going to be a saving.
Well, it's interesting because, we moved in, we've had a lot of, there's a place for everything. And a lot of this technology is really useful it needs to solve a problem. But people aren't using it to solve a problem. They're using it to keep up with the Joneses. So a lot of it was about, stopping contamination and everything else. And people are using it in the wrong places. I've seen, wiggly exposed sand scrapey type bunkers up on chalk downland where it's windy. And, it's going to get blown around and it's going to cause a maintenance hazard. There's a reason revetting came in, and, when Colt rebunkered, Royal Liverpool, he spent a lot of time working out where the winds were going so he could work which way the bunkers should be orientated so that the wind wouldn't blow the sand out of the bunkers. And making them smaller and revetted and more contained was a solution to a problem. And I think people misidentify the problem and they go for the shiny and new and, the obvious spend, which is... it's a human condition, but it's for the experts to guide them better, I think.
I was at Cape Wickham last year, and I've never seen a collection of smaller bunkers in the world, because it's one of the windiest golf courses you ever play in the world. But each bunker is like a 10 pence piece. They collect a lot.
Yes,
but they're tiny and they're potted, so it just means that you go in them, good luck, but they just can't, there's so much wind that they can't even retain a bunker facing the wrong way, or the right way, as Colt would put it. But there's, it's really interesting because it leads from a number of golf courses rushing to that Augusta effect that we've been talking about, chasing the thing that Augusta has been for the last 50 years, to Augusta this week just turning around and going, no, we're going firm and fast. Which is,
I actually heard on commentary, and I thought, it'll be interesting to see how the club feel about it. I had one of the commentating teams described the greens before play yesterday as slightly yellowing, which previously would have caused them for the badge to be withdrawn, but it seems to be almost a badge of honour this year, as we've discussed in terms of the discussion of firm and fast. And we're recording this on day one. It's going to be a dry weekend. It's supposed to be a windy weekend. Having been absorbed by it, not just by Alathabel, but absorbed generally yesterday evening, looking in the evening, I'm hopeful this will be one of the best ever Masters, because we're seeing people having to scramble for par from so many areas. And it's a war of attrition, but nevertheless, the talent of these golfers is showing. And that's what Augusta and good architecture can do. So, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful it does become a little bit of an example for people. So as you say, Jasper, no one walks into the secretary's office and said, oh, yeah, that green's browning off a little bit, without understanding really what, that may be from an agronomical perspective. So hopefully it can be a positive poster child as opposed to what it has been in the past, which was something unattainable for people. And people forget Augusta's only open 5 months of the year. And they, the amount of spending they can have, and the Players Services building was put up in a year. And it's bonkers, and all credit to them, they can do it and everything else, but it's completely unobtainable for the average club. Yeah.
There's an interesting story at Augusta where there's the meeting with the chairman. With the Augusta members all show up, obviously, for the big week. And there's like an AGM of sorts where all the members that are on site or on campus, as they say, get to meet with the chairman. And the chairman's first point is update on the golf courses. And it's about a sentence long, goes the story. And the chairman simply says, we've made changes. I know you're going to like them. And that's it. We'll move on. So, yeah, it's an interesting one, but they are definitely the tip of the spear. And I think more than anything, Augusta kind of sets the tone for everything that comes behind it. So, yeah, I think we're all here for it. If it's a little bit firmer, a little bit faster, it'll be good. I listened to a podcast. I think it was Garrett Morrison and Brian Schneider discussing, it's the tail end of it, discussing turf conditions. And they were saying it's actually quite clever because, I mean, this is how dialed in Augusta is that mowing heights at certain points on that property are higher than others because they actually want the ball to stop on a side slope, down slope, up slope, where if everything was just, millimeters, and they could do that if they wanted to, but they'll actually try and get, instead of everything kind of falling to the bottom and everybody's got a level lie, they want it to hold. And that's what makes say 13 so good. You get that ball above your feet and it's kind of a little bit back, behind you and downhill and side hill. And now you're trying to hit like this cut into it's that level of detail. And to your point, Simon, there's very few courses that have, they set the mowers up and they let the boys go or the robots at this point. But,
I think you're right. I think that the thing about Augusta is everything's done with intent, and that intent is to release the topography and release the shot making that's required. And that's another video that people should go back and look at. It's the 3 minutes of deliberation that Nick Faldo had on the 13th fairway back in '96.
Yeah, was it 2-iron or 5-wood?
Yeah, and it just, you can see how he's struggling with the topography, and it's even on the 2-iron, literally just before he pulls the trigger, he's trying to get his feet in the right position, and it's something quite impressive. So, but yeah, I mean, in terms of how these things, our England list is say coming out, I'm extremely honoured. Thank you, Jasper, and the whole organisation for asking me to be lead. I step in following others, and we've got a really good group of panellists, and I think people will enjoy the list and enjoy the debate about the list, which they're always debated. It's to celebrate architecture, and we're talking about Mackenzie at Augusta, and we've mentioned Colt, we mentioned Simpson, we mentioned others. You've identified that I've got a particular research bias to James Braid. I want to assure listeners and those involved in the rankings that Braid courses will not fly up the rankings just because I'm the lead. And in fact, to evidence that, I've done some stats, and my raison d'etre in life is to raise the talent of James Braid in people's minds. But you'll be pleased to hear that there is a extremely moderate average move of one ranking place for Braid courses on the list. So it's not skewed out. There's no personal biases in this list. It's a collection of rankers. So and the rankings that come out of those.
And maybe that's a good point. Just a couple of things just to note. So obviously we've got some new entries. And maybe this is a time just to go into some of the nuts and bolts of the ranking itself. So new entries. We talked about some risers, the big ones, but new entries, C-Scale. So that was cool to see. I think because of its geographic location and Silith getting a lot of press over the last few years, C-Scale's almost been forgotten about, because even if you get to Silith, which is a trek in and of itself, even once you're there, C-Scale is still difficult to get to. Then we had Formby Ladies, which I think everybody... I love the fact that the English 100 has a course like that, because everybody would look at Formby, which does see a rise, and there'll be some interesting discussions around Merseyside. But most people would go to Formby's and then not spend time at Formby's Ladies. And I hope I genuinely hope that if you're going to Formby, one or the other, that you tack on the other one and make it 36, because they're similar in places, but they're completely different golf courses over the same piece of land. And even from that perspective, it's a cool thing to see and something to contemplate.
I was there. Sorry to jump in, like Jasper.
Nope.
Went there in October for the first time to play Formby Ladies, and it's more links than Formby is. Formby is a combination of links and heathland and forested in places, and it's great for that. And I love Formby, the main course, and there's a few interesting. I know Joe and Sam are doing a couple of changes on the 7th, and that work looks to be really well considered. But as a cohesive 18, Formby ladies is a joy. It may be 5,000 yards odd, but it is. It's a real test of golf. The best graduated heather management I've seen on a golf course ever. Really intelligent, using heather as rough and having semi-heather, which is a really, really clever way of ensuring that people don't, lose balls. They get caught up in the first cut of heather. So it's really well kept, and the superintendent and the team there should be lauded for it. But yeah, it's a joy, an absolute joy. And it is the last remaining ladies only club in England. And for that, we should celebrate it too. I know politically we maybe should be calling it Formby Women's, but that's for them to decide. But I think there's a real place to celebrate the women's game, and guys that look down on it, shame on you. You're missing a great golf course.
And hopefully more people will seek it out. And it's a shame that sometimes they need that. It needs to be on a list for them to be considered to go. But I think there'll be a lot of people that I think the reception that will be had is that for a lot of people, they say finally. And then for a lot of other people, it'll be a gateway course for them to start looking at courses that are less than 6,000 yards as potential ones to go and enjoy.
For American listeners right now, I know Mike Kaiser was over in the UK last year, and what he was doing was going around looking at all the under 6,000 courses, 6,000 yard courses that you could find, because he thinks that is the future of golf within America, particularly because the majority of Americans are that older generation. And he wants to make great golf courses under 6,000 yards. And if you've got someone like Mike Kaiser doing that, then you need to pay attention.
Yeah, I think, and he's also putting his money where his mouth is. You look at Sedge Valley and what Doak's done there, that's par 68 and maybe 6,200, but it's, you've got to move these things gradually. And the other wonderful course that is not on our list, but, is a great course is Sunningdale Heath, which is, 5,000 odd yards and, par 58, and is a joy.
Sticking with Cumbria, Appleby. So this is one it's an interesting one. I waxed lyrical about it. So I know there will be some naysayers out there that's like, oh, Jasper, shoehorned this one in. That's not the case. No. It came on my radar, because we had quite a few people who had seen it, especially from our northern panel, that loved it. I had heard about it. I had not been to see it. We had a few people that said it's really, really good. It's probably third in Cumbria, which is where it's ended up landing. And it'll be interesting to see the reception of that. But again, 70 quid, I think, or no, let me see, 35 quid. Sorry, doubled it. 35 quid you can play Appleby for. I know CDP is in there consulting now. Hopefully they don't change it too much. I know there's a couple of things they're looking at. We're not saying it's a perfect golf course and that's why it's got the ranking it's got, but it's one of those golf courses, I think, that, a lot of people will drive past it, on their way from one course to another, especially if you're going up to the northwest. But Appleby is definitely worth a play. And we actually got quite a few people there, because I think early on it was highlighted and we're like, really? Are we really going to think about this? And then we ended up getting quite a few people there. And without fail, they came back, and of anyone in the panel who had played anything in Cumbria, it was Silith, Seascale, and Appleby. And after we asked them, virtually universally, they came back with those 3. So it's nice to see a course like Appleby go in. And then we had Denham and Dunstanburgh come in. And Denham, I think, is an interesting one. Again, it's short. It's got Colt heritage. It's got Braid heritage. It's got Hawtrey and Taylor heritage. So Hawtrey and Taylor did some really funky stuff there on a couple of the green sites, which has been actually restored. Clyde Johnson's been in there doing some work. And I think it's one of those courses that for a lot of years, it was a private club for all intents and purposes. You could probably get on if you really wanted to. It's not necessarily put itself in the spotlight. It's got one of the best clubhouses in the game. The lunch, honestly,
It's next level.
Is next level. It's a special, if you're going for a society day or you want to have a proper English golf club experience, that's not Muirfield or Sandwich or Rye, Denham is like a brilliant shout.
Eating in that clubhouse is not bizarre when you have so many dead heads around you that you're eating. It's just because it's like a hunting lodge. It's just bloody stag's heads everywhere, or like random animals that were shot back in the colonies.
Well, I think that's what it was, yeah.
I think what you're both telling us is that Denham's falling out of the top 100 vegan club list.
It is.
It is the carnivore's paradise in regard to both shooting trophies, and if you want meat sweats, then yeah, you can get it at Denham. I've played Denham a lot. I was brought up around the BB&O and played a lot of BB&O golf around Denham. It's always been, a great course, but like many sort of inland Colt Braid heritage courses over the years, they lost their way a little bit in terms of bunker shaping and general maintenance and over treeing, and Clyde's done a great job of bringing them back. The Hawtrey and Taylor work is most probably guided by Braid, because they were, they're his construction partners on a great deal of jobs, and that sometimes gets confused in the telling, but that's not unusual. But it's a really good, solid home counties golf course of that challenges you. It asks you questions. Yep. I mean, Clyde has exposed the ravine hole, and it's a super course, and quite heavily.
And that's one where I think the reason why
area weakness, it's that back area. Once you go through the. Now, I always play this, the only time I ever play is in the Denham Bowl, which is a big piss up kind of match foursomes thing. And I don't know which one's 1 or which one's 10. I'm pretty sure I'm talking about the middle of the back 9 is where its weakness is, but the rest of it is just great golf.
Well, you'll be proud to know. Yesterday, we were on site. So the ravine hole, so 10, 11, 12, 13 is the ravine hole. That tee shot is phenomenal. It's some of the best work on the golf course, and actually they've reinstated the tee that was there, and all they did was cut down trees. So the amount, some of the best work on that golf course was literally just revealing what had been lost. And then the next hole has been bunkered very cleverly. So there's new tees currently being built, and then there's 2 bunkers that are finished. They still have to get the mowing line sorted out on that. But I think those back-to-back 5s for a lot of people were considered maybe the weak part of the golf course. And actually, I think now when you play it next, James, you'll be very pleasantly surprised. I think those courses, or those 2 holes, now elevate almost the perceived weakest part of the golf course to 2 of the most memorable and, if not strategic, parts of it. There are 2 par 5s, depending on the wind, that bigger players can decide to go for. But in a lot of cases, the greens run away from you at Denham, which is a really nice feature, 10 especially. But I think Denham's one of those ones where I'm proud it's going in, because they've been doing good work, the right work. It's been slow and steady. Trees have been coming out. Corridors have been widened. The bunkers aren't copy and paste. If you go to Denham and Hadley Wood for another, it sounds like we're having a bit of a Clyde Johnson, but the point is, he's one of the few architects at the minute, that is actually doing work that's different from what you see everywhere else. And I think that needs to be applauded, and that needs to be reflected in rankings. So the clubs that have done good work, Hadley Wood has a modest rise after doing exceptional work. The bunkers there, if you want to see Mackenzie style bunkers, if you look at Pasatiempo or Cypress Point or some of the old photographs and you're like, that would be really cool to play a golf course like that. Hadley Wood is a really good golf course to go to this summer.
I think what's interesting about that is that Clyde's always very well researched and, obviously uses as much photographic imagery as he can find. And, that's your passion, Jasper, is to find the historic documentation and mine too. And I think it's the fact that they're Mackenzie bunkers that are appropriate for the site and appropriate for the chronology of his work. And that type of bunkering, wasn't necessarily the case on all his projects. And sometimes, they get imposed on other projects. And I often get asked this as a braid specialist when I'm asked to consult with people, what's a braid bunker and what's a Mackenzie bunker and what's a Colt bunker and everything else. And it's what's important to the club is what that particular architect did on your site for you, because there was a reason that they chose that style, and that there's often a practical reason why they used those as well. So, and that's where Clyde's doing some really good work. And you're right, this is not the Clyde Johnson show, but it's far from it. But when somebody does such really good, well-researched work, we need to raise the profile of it, because that's the only way we'll raise the profile and the quality of work from everybody else.
Absolutely.
So that's great. And then I think you said the last new entrant was Dunstanburgh, which, I love particularly, is a braid course that his design was implemented over a number of years, which is really quite interesting. It was over several decades where he constantly added holes. It went from 6 to 12 to 14 at one point, and then 18. And again, great value, northeast of England, some wonderful golf up there, obviously with Goswick and, Bamburgh Castle as well is a great sporting course as well. Braid's Lost Holy Island on Lindisfarne is well worth a walk out to go and see dunes if you want undiscovered golf courses, lost golf courses. But Dunstanburgh, they've done a great job, and it's such a great organic, local project where they embrace non-golfers. The clubhouse is effectively a tee shop for walkers to the beach. It's got a really great feel to it, and they've done wonderful work there. It's as you say, Jasper, it's a joy to bring those types of courses like an Appleby, like a Seascale, to people's attention. And they're there not for that reason. They're there by right. They're there because they've earned their right, and the appreciation of them has gone up. So, there'll people will have dropped out. People will be back in the candidates list, and that doesn't mean that they're bad golf courses. Quite the opposite. It just means that people have had an appreciation of something else, and they may reappreciate your club again in the future, and
in due course.
So, yeah, exactly.
Here's one for you. So I just looked at Dunstanburgh. So this summer, if you want to pay for your green fee, this summer peak season, £55. If you play a weekday, so Monday to Friday, £55. For an extra tenner, you get a coffee and bacon roll on arrival. You get your 18 holes, and then you either get a freshly made pizza or a burger and chips. So for £65, you can play one of England's top 100 courses, have breakfast and have lunch, all for £65. So, I mean, and that's, I think, what we're trying to celebrate here. So just some technical points, perhaps, with the panel is we've not only added a lot more input, close to 80 people have had input on the English 100. In addition to that, we've moved away from golf unions. Now, the reason for that is that when we look at the data across the website, which is about 750,000 people a month, when we look at those individuals, what we see is that they're planning golf trips, and predominantly Americans. A lot of the traffic comes from America. So Americans would not be familiar with most geographic locations in England. and even less familiar with the golf unions and the intricacies of golf unions. A good example is Middlesex. So Middlesex is a historic county and therefore had a golf union, and it was quite a weird shape. It kind of started like in Oxfordshire and kind of went down through Buckinghamshire and then into a sliver of London. And some clubs that were in various counties were kind of put into it to balance it. And look, we've gone away from that and we've gone to strictly geographic locations. So in the actual breakdown of it, we have the southeast, southwest, Greater London, East Anglia, East Midlands, West Midlands, Northeast, Northwest, and Yorkshire, I think are the 9. I think I've got them all. And then within each of those regions, we've actually made more rankings. So for example, in the Northwest, now we have Cheshire, Cumbria, Lancashire, and Merseyside, along with Greater Manchester. So it's allowed us to compare courses that were previously not compared with one another. And that's also created its own challenges, because previously we had panels that had very definite lines, I guess you could say. And now we were asking panels to compare courses against each other that previously no one had ever done. So there has been some movement within the counties, within the regions, and within the top 100 for a lot of those types of reasons. And I think what we'll probably do is similar to what we've done in Scotland, because it was such a dramatic change across the rankings. We didn't think that it would necessarily be fair on this release to necessarily show how much some courses rose and how much other courses fell, simply because the constructs of the panel and the structure of it itself had been changed. So you could argue that from an England point of view, you could look at that, but still there's some interesting things that happen on panels when you align them across world, region, country, sub-region, county, that if it moves up in one county, then it bumps up into a region, and there's almost like a trickle down or a push-up effect. And so because of that, we thought we're just going to put it out. We're going to let it sit, and we're going to get people to just take it as it is, without clubs being too worried about where they were previously and where they are now. So hopefully that explains a little bit of the movement. And I think we said this before, Simon, and James, when we were all speaking about it before we popped on, is that if you've kind of moved up 5 or down 5, that's not an indictment on you. You're kind of maybe found your spot within your tier, if that makes sense.
There's a lot of movement, a lot of changes, because things have moved in terms of the number of people contributing, in terms of the quality of the minds that are contributing. And it's quite exciting. I have to admit, I'm finding it very exciting, because there's golf courses that I love that are getting appreciated now. Not because of me pushing them up, but because actually when you get in 100 new people that really know what they're talking about, you tend to find you do get a better understanding of where things lie and where things sit. It's really interesting.
And there is some challenge in debate, and there always will be, and that's part of the strength of the list. But when you grow the pool, and hopefully the quality of the panelists, and we've had some wonderful panelists that have been here for a number of years. We've had some go, some join. You know, people's appreciations and people's own biases are different. This certainly is not my list. This is, I maybe lead whatever, but, arithmetically, I'm such a small part of the ranking. My job is just to really help panelists come to their own conclusions in line with our guidance. I obviously have a personal interest in raising their knowledge and their appreciation of good architecture, and hopefully that comes through. And I think it has come through, but not in any directed or forced manner, which is important. I haven't played all 100. By admission, I don't think that's necessary for me to have played all 100. I want to play all 100, and I'm looking forward to visiting the small number that I haven't played, including Appleby. I just asked the clubs to be very open and understand that these things are never set in stone, and the more ranking people we can get to see you, the better the likelihood is that you will find your place. And everybody is quite rightly proud about their club and where they should be. And that should always be the case. And we would want people to make constant improvement and highlighting what they do. But be custodians of your course and be custodians to what's pure and special and unique about your course. And what we're seeing in this list is those that have, and not necessarily those that have gone for the shiny and new, but those that have actually understand really what they're about architecturally and playing conditions wise, not agronomy wise in terms of, we don't rate people on the speed of their greens and all that sort of stuff, but in terms of being true to their topography and their geographic position and their style. They benefited in the list, and I think that will hopefully continue over time. And we would welcome brand new entrants with open arms in terms of from the candidate list. And we would also hope that those that are the highest quality modern courses continue to be praised and included in the lists, which they will, but they'll find their level. And the best are still there. They're still on the list. They may have moved within the list, but any course that's within the top 100, 150, 200 of any ranking in England is a darn good golf course and is well worth playing.
Absolutely.
There was just before we finish up, there was one thing you gave us a stat about pricing comparatively to rises or drops. Mm-hmm. One thing I would like to say, a caveat to that, is for people that don't know, a lot of the golf courses are very kind to our panelists and offer courtesy of the course. So they actually wouldn't know which price point they're playing at for a lot of them. So that's not conscientious of value being added into the rankings. I just wanted to caveat that statement.
No, that's a fair point. But I think inevitably people go and look on the website and before they go, and we don't demand or request courtesy per se, but the clubs generally are very generous, and we really appreciate that. And part of the reason for that is we don't want to be perceived as people can't buy rankings on top 100. They the editorial division, and when clubs are involved, and we like clubs to be involved on the editorial side of the business, and that's all fine. But my part of my job to be here is to be an independent arbiter of these things, and to separate the clumsy expression is church and state. And I come from a financial market background where it's really important that the analysts in banking are separated from the analysts in equity research, because you don't want those biases which caused problems back in the 1980s and various and in dot-com crashes and various other insider trading type stuff. So it's very important that you separate those, and that there is the conflict of interest is removed, and that's why part of the reason why it's good that as a volunteer in my spare time I'm quite happy to be lead, and hope there's a bit of grey hair and gravitas that can ensure that doesn't happen, and that the rankings are purer for it, and hopefully can be accepted by the users of the website more happily.
Simon, I know that Jasper and I have noticed it, but we've talked about it a few times in private where it's like, oh no, these clubs Jasper has to deal with these clubs because they're on an editorial role, and it's like they're doing stuff with editorial, and it's like, oh no, just watch them drop. God, how am I going to explain this one?
Well, and I think that, it's a very fair point, and maybe public service announcement, or if we have any golf clubs or managers or committee members that are listening, as was mentioned, we make it very clear whenever I deal with any clubs, that even though we deal with the ranking side and maybe the content side of things, that spend with top 100 won't affect the rankings. In all of our marketing collateral, whether that's the rate sheets or emails that go out, there's always something in print that says that this will not influence. So you can't you can't inflate yours or suppress your neighbors' golf courses. So we make that very, very clear across the board. The other thing too, we've had a couple of issues that we've had to deal with recently, stateside even, where individuals have claimed to be top 100 panelists. There's various ways and means that various companies try to get around this or try to prevent this from happening. At top 100, what we've done, we've thought about having ID cards. But once an ID card is issued, it's really hard to get it back, especially if someone steps away from it. So those can continue to be used. So what we always ask is that if anyone ever reaches out to a club to request play, that there's a few things that should happen. So one is they should identify who they are. They should CC in a defined inbox for top 100 golf courses. So there should always be someone on that email thread that has a legitimate top100golfcourses.com email address. And if there are any queries, they can feel free to get in touch. And before they open their doors or let people through the gate, they can check with us. And we invite clubs to do that. We actually encourage them to. And then the last thing to mention is what you've mentioned, Simon, is that in all of the correspondence with the clubs, our panelists always make it known that we're more than happy to cover any costs associated with any visit. So Top 100 doesn't pay for their panel visits or for their panelists. Panelists don't pay to be top 100 panelists. Again, there's other panels out there that do one or both of those things, depending on who you are. And we would never, ever expect, demand, or even hint at getting any type of, we'd say, hospitality in the form of food or beverage. In fact, in the correspondence that does go out to the panelists, we actually encourage them to have modest spends, if applicable, in Pro Shop and or Clubhouse, just to show our gratitude and appreciation. So we hope that all of our panelists, bar none, would uphold those standards. And if they don't, well, they won't be panelists for long as soon as we find out about it. That's not a threat. It is a promise. But we find that that's the best way to keep everybody honest. Hopefully it's reassurance for the industry, for the committees, for the management of clubs, and a shot across the bow of any of those individuals that are still pretending to be associated with Top 100 but aren't. Slowly we're weeding them out, and we've done a good job of doing that. We still know that there are some bad actors out there. We will catch up with you.
Well, Jasper, I know that there's been a lot of talk at Top 100 recently that echoes what you're talking about, because we've been discussing a lot of different things that are going on at Top 100. I won't go into details, but it also reflects negatively on the people that are the face of Top 100, which is you, myself, and the others like Simon, and that's the last thing we want to do. And it reflects negatively on the panelists. So the last thing we want to do is have anything but the utmost respect for the clubs, because at the end of the day, we can't do it without them. We work with the clubs completely in respect of what they stand for and what they are and what golf is. It's not bought, it's not sold, it's not it's respected. It's people who love the game. It's this Top 100 wouldn't exist without the passionate people that offer their free time to be able to do what we do. So that's the last thing we want to do is piss off anyone within that group. Let's be honest.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. I think an hour and a half is probably good enough for England. As a Scotsman, that's an hour and a half longer than I would like to talk
You'll
about
never
England.
get back.
I feel a wee bit dirty. I might have to go have a shower.
I understand I understand it. I did my undergrad in Scotland, so I always say my educated half is Scottish. So I understand where you're coming from, James. But when you've got the depth of quality in England, it's inevitably going to be a long discussion.
So thank you very much for everyone who's listening. Thank you very much to Simon. Thanks for joining us, and thanks you for all your contributions on the panel. I know that everyone's enjoying having you as panel lead. and being able to tap into that wealth of knowledge. And thank you again, Jasper, as well, as always. And
Yeah, good to be here.
thank you very much for everyone who's listening. Please remember to play fast, lunch slow.
Top100golfcourses.com has set the standard for golfers worldwide, and now you can wear that standard proudly. Premium apparel and exclusive gear for those who truly know the game. Shop now at top100golfcourses.com.